Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to dial in. Welcome back to another episode. I'm Colin O'Callahan.
I'm Ryan Curtin.
All I have is one thing to say. The Pats are back, baby.
Well, yeah, they're in the Super Bowl.
Drake May said it, so his words, not mine. Conference championship has come and gone. We are officially a couple weeks away, 1 week and 2 days from the Super Bowl to be exact. The New England Patriots are taking on the Seattle Seahawks in an epic rematch from Super Bowl 49. We're going to get into all of that. But, of course, we have some laundry list items that we got to take care of. The number one that I think is most important is it's a Hall of Fame topic. Bill Belichick, not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That is such a travesty. And
Really?
It's such an abomination. Do you want to go first or should I?
I'm sure you have more to say about it, so I'll let you go first. And
Okay. So when I saw this report for the first time, from Seth Wickersham of ESPN, highly respected. I actually got to interview him when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
So an awesome guy, and he does a tremendous job for ESPN. The pieces that he comes out with, phenomenal. So I have nothing bad to say. Yeah, this is by far the most shameful, most disgraceful, and most disrespectful thing that I have ever seen from the Pro Football Hall of Fame committee.
Wow.
I mean, what else is there to say? You're pretty much saying one of the greatest, if not the greatest coach in NFL history, who constructed the most dominant dynasty in the history of the sport, who's got 8 Super Bowls etched to his name, is not going to be in the Hall of Fame for the first year in his eligibility. It is flat out shameful from the Pro Football Hall of Fame committee. Bill Polian, the report said that Bill Polian, former GM of the Buffalo Bills, Carolina Panthers, Indianapolis Colts, again, highly respected individual, 6-time executive of the year. For him to pretty much be the lead advocate of him not being selected or him not being inducted, that is abominable. And honestly, whoever did not vote him in should be exposed front street. I want names, damn it. I want names. I want mugshots. I don't really care how it's going to, I don't care what it takes for that to get done. How in God's name do you not have the head coach that has the second most all-time wins in NFL history, who's got 2 Coach of the Year awards, and who's got, again, he only needs 2 fingers to fill his hands with rings. For him to not be enshrined in a canon, what more does the guy have to do to get selected? And I know and I know what people are going to say. Well, he got caught for Spygate. He was, somewhat punished for Deflategate. You know what happened after Spygate? They went 16-0 the rest of the regular season. What happened after that season? He got 3 more Super Bowls. What happened after Deflategate? Tom Brady got suspended. They ended up winning the Super Bowl once he went through that 4-game suspension, and they overcame one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history. It is a disgrace. It's a mess. It's a disaster. And anybody who said that Bill Belichick shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, you need to be damn ashamed. And for the fans that kind of support that, you're jealous. So, go ahead.
Tell us how you really feel, Colin. No, I mean,
I think I had to hold myself back a little, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I could tell that you were trying not to really, say some things that would have gotten you in trouble. But I think it's definitely true that I think he absolutely should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, and the fact that he wasn't it's surprising and it is a little disappointing. But I think we all know that he's going to get in next year. I don't think that it's an issue of he's not good enough to make the Hall of Fame. I think he's absolutely proven himself as a Hall of Fame coach. And, all you mentioned, he's only got 2 fingers left for the rings that he's got.
I mean, you can't talk about the history of the sport without mentioning Bill Belichick. That's what makes it even worse. The fact that he literally won 3 Super Bowls in his first 4 years and then ended up winning 3 out of the next 5 a decade later and pretty much constructed everything that there is to know about the Patriots dynasty. It's shameful. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to say, like, one of our classmates actually sent us an article by a writer for the Kansas City Star, and, they're a voter for MVP as well. And, I was reading this article, and it was pretty interesting. And, I don't agree necessarily with not voting in Belichick as a first ballot Hall of Famer. But it explained that, he wanted these guys that have been sort of on the outside looking in of the Hall of Fame. He wanted to give them a chance to get in. He wanted to give guys, and I'm looking for the names right here. Shoot, I read it earlier, but
I mean, even from that perspective, okay, that's fine. If you want to give guys that, weren't necessarily given the chances. I remember last year, Sterling Sharp got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Amazing career that was unfortunately cut short due to an injury. But if he had played longer, he probably would have been just as good, if not, on the same level as Jerry Rice. I get all of that, and it's a fair perspective. I'm just trying to figure out how in God's name Bill Belichick wasn't, a check mark, because you need 40 out of 50 votes to get in. I think that's the process. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck the other 10 writers had to say about that.
Yeah, no, and it's true. Like, I don't know if all 10 of them had, or all however many of them had the same argument as the Kansas City Star writer. I'm assuming they probably didn't. But he said that, he wanted to make sure guys like Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, L.C. Greenwood, those guys all got in. Definitely very deserving people. And if, they don't get in on years like this, when are they ever going to get in, right? Like, right. Bill Belichick will absolutely be in the Hall of Fame, probably as early as next year. I don't think that history will remember him differently just because he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. People will remember that he is, a 6-time Super Bowl champion. He has all these accolades to his name, most wins. The list goes on. And I don't think that people are going to say, well, he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, so he is not, a top whatever coach of all time. All right.
Well, Terrell Owens wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. That doesn't mean he's not one of the top 5 best wide receivers in the NFL. The way that T.O. got snubbed and the way that he got robbed was just as shameful, if not even more disgraceful than that. So, I mean, that shouldn't really diminish your legacy whatsoever, just not being first ballot. But I'm going to put this in proper perspective. 2001, Drew Bledsoe goes down. Tom Brady, the backup quarterback, who nobody's even really heard of at this point, takes over. They end up winning a bunch of games. They go from being 0-2 to 11-5 that regular season. In the middle of that year, Bill Belichick made the bold decision when Drew Bledsoe was back, or when he was fully healthy to play again. Bill Belichick said, I trust more and I believe more in this kid named Tom Brady to try to guide us to a championship than Drew Bledsoe, who at that point had just signed a 10-year, $100 million extension to be the face of the franchise and to, stay there throughout the rest of his career. Without that 6th-round pick, trying to take that team over the hump, without Bill Belichick having the guts and having the balls to make that decision to say, I trust the backup more than the 10-year, $100 million dude, any other scenario, who knows where this franchise would have been? And maybe legacy, and there's no question that legacies, careers, they are 10 times different than they were before, than they are right now. Yeah. So,
well, it almost kind of sounded like a Tom Brady argument, a big gamble by Belichick. But no, I'm sorry. I agree with your I agree with your Terrell Owens point, and I'm yanking your chain a little bit here too. I think again, I 100% agree. Bill should definitely be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but again, I don't think, like with Terrell Owens, I don't think anyone's going to remember him any differently because he was not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
If Tom Brady somehow doesn't become a first ballot Hall of Famer due to the same process or due to the same logic, that's going to be an even more heated discussion between current athletes, former athletes, analysts, players, coaches, whatever the hell you name it. Even Robert Kraft, he's eligible for the Hall of Fame this year. I believe that Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, they should have gotten in together. And I hope Robert Kraft does get in this year as well, because he rightfully deserves it, just for him to be able to put that franchise back on the map the way that it has been over the last 30-plus years. But you can't put in one person in the Hall of Fame and then leave the other 2 out in their first year of eligibility. That's what makes me more livid and more mad than anything else, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying to hold myself back because I don't want to be too disrespectful, but anybody who didn't vote Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame this year should be damn ashamed of themselves. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And I mean, if Tom Brady doesn't get in when he's eligible, then I think, as a first ballot Hall of Famer, I think then that's at least equally as upsetting, if not very more so. So, I mean, I agree with that.
And the Pro Football Hall of Fame, apparently they came out with some statement like 2 days later saying that, we can remove our voters if they violated our bylaws. That's not going to change anything. that doesn't absolve anybody of the fact that the greatest head coach of all time just got flat out robbed and got flat out snubbed. And to do it 2 days after the fact, what the hell were they even thinking? Whoever was in charge of that PR department was like, do I really have to put this out? I just felt bad for the guy that even had to come out with that release. Can you imagine? But it's just very messy and it's complicated. And again, I just feel bad for Bill Belichick because, listen, say what you will about what his legacy was like before, he got the Patriots job and after Tom Brady left. Like I said, you can't talk about the greatness and the history of the sport without mentioning him. Mm-hmm. So let's put that off to the side right now because we have a whole bunch of other stuff we got to discuss. A few head coaching moves were made in the past week or so. Let's talk about them. We got Mike McCarthy going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Todd Monken taking the Cleveland Browns head coaching job, and Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator last year for the Bills, got promoted. So the only two vacancies that are still open are the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. So out of the three ones that just, got recently announced, which one is your favorite and which one do you not necessarily agree with the most?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, and I think you agree with me as well. The one that we agree with the least is Mike McCarthy going to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
easily.
It's just such a... Safe isn't even the right word to describe it. Like, it's such a boring pick, so uninspired.
I know.
McCarthy, when he was in Dallas, that team really was not playing inspired football with that roster. They could have done a lot better. Obviously, they were first-round exits in 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they were 12-5, won the division. That was
I think it was 2021.
2021.
2022, they won a playoff game, but then they lost in the second round. But go ahead.
Right, yes. Yeah, the year that they won the NFC, why am I blanking, East. And, I mean, that was their best shot at winning, and Mike McCarthy couldn't get it done. He hasn't really had a standout win in the last, since he was on the Packers team.
Yeah.
Really. So, I mean, I think it's just going to be more of the same for Pittsburgh after this signing. Like, we saw what he did in Dallas. He was great in the regular season, or at least passable in the regular season some years with a good roster, but couldn't get it done in the playoffs. And I think that, especially for a Pittsburgh team that's trying to, at this point, should be trying to rebuild at least. Yeah. I think it's definitely not the right signing. I don't know how he's going to impact the team. And even if they do somehow go 9-8 again and make the playoffs, I don't think Mike McCarthy's the guy to, rile up the team and get them to win a game.
Yeah, I agree with you. To say that this was a safe pick would be an understatement because the Steelers, they're just trying to delude themselves into thinking that they could still compete for a division title or even go on like a deeper playoff run. But your defense is aging. Your quarterback situation is in a conundrum right now. Your offense doesn't have a lot of firepower. I mean, the fact that they've had so many mediocre seasons, they haven't even won a playoff game in over a decade. That move seems like to me that you still think that you're competitive. I mean, listen, Mike McCarthy, he's a good coach, but he's not a great one. There's nothing that you can associate with greatness. I understand he won a Super Bowl with them in 2010, but Aaron Rodgers is not exactly, the same quarterback that he is now. Like when Mike McCarthy had Aaron Rodgers, he was at the peak of his career. He had 4 MVPs. They've had multiple division titles. They've gotten to the conference championship a few times. But since then, in the postseason, since that one Super Bowl win, I think they've been I think Mike McCarthy's had like a 500 record, if not even a sub 500 record in the playoffs. And in Dallas, 2021, they're the 3rd seed in the NFC, and they lose in the first round of the 49ers. The next year, they send Tom Brady into the retirement home. Okay, that's probably their signature win because Dak Prescott was phenomenal. And then the next week, they only scored 12 points against the 49ers, and the only thing that was memorable for the Cowboys was Zeke lining up at center on the final play of the game. And then the next year was the one I think you were referring to when they were the 2nd seed.
Yes.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. I completely forgot about that. But Dak and CD, they were absolutely outstanding. The offense was a full hum. Micah Parsons was in charge of that defense. And then they lose to the 7th seeded Green Bay Packers in the first round, 48-32, but it was 48-16 at one point.
Yeah.
And then the next year they missed the playoffs, and then he ended up getting fired, and now the rest is history. So honestly, I feel like the Steelers right now, they're just saying to themselves, you know what? they're pretty much just content with the way that things have been. You know, you're not really good enough to win a Super Bowl, but you know you don't want to be terrible to the point where you're competing for a top 5 or top 10 draft pick. Pretty much being in the middle of the line, right where, you know, the 8, 9, 10 win teams, we're pretty much just trying to reach that status. And that's just, nobody wants to see that anymore. Like, I don't even know why Art Rooney II is just so complacent with how average and stale things have been. And, you know, the Ravens are not in the best situation either, but hey, Jesse Minter is one hell of a defensive mind, and you still have a boatload of talent on both sides of the ball. All they really need is just that one guy to get them over the hump. The Steelers, they have way bigger issues and holes that they got to fill out, and I don't know if Mike McCarthy is really necessarily the answer. I understand you don't want to throw somebody into a raging fire, but I don't really like that at all. But I feel like Joe Brady going to Buffalo, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it either, because I feel like, I mean, listen, firing Sean McDermott might have been the right decision, at least in my opinion, but I also feel like, you know, firing him after the playoffs, it just gives you a limited amount of options, because the teams that were already putting in head coaching searches took the best ones available.
Right.
And so I'm not completely, if it wasn't going to be Joe Brady, it was probably going to be Brian Daboll. And who knows if that would have been the best situation, but yeah, I'm just, listen, it's Josh Allen's guy. You know the offense is going to stay the same. My question is, who the hell is going to be in charge of that defense? Because it has been dealing with a ton of injuries over the last couple of seasons, and it's really started to fall off a steep cliff, you know, over the past few seasons. That's what I'm concerned about. And then I feel like with Cleveland, the fact that they got a head coaching job faster than the Raiders and the Cardinals is impressive. Like, seeing the process of how they, like, apparently they were asking, like, the candidates to write, like, essay questions as a part of their interview process. I don't know if that's true or not, but just,
I believe it. It's Cleveland.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't. The minute I saw that, I was like, yeah, some of this has to be true.
Yeah, no one else would do that.
And that's why I thought, like, okay, they're probably just going to promote Jim Schwartz, which might not have been the best case scenario, but all right, continuity there. He's still in charge of an outstanding defense that, you know, did pretty well last year, but they pretty much screwed him over and said, you know what, we're going to hire Todd Monken, who could fix that offense, but the problem is they're just such in bad cap jail right now, and the offense just has a lack of talent. So it's more of a believe it and see it approach if you're in Berea. So
yeah. I mean, I don't love either of the other signings that much. I think, you know, given the options that these teams had, I think they, you know, it was the best case scenario for both of them.
Yeah.
You're again running low on options. Like maybe Brian Daboll could have been a fit in one of these teams, but I mean, you know, obviously you sort of mentioned it earlier. Like I don't know if firing McDermott, what they did for the Bills, set that team up well. And you know, Joe Brady, I don't think is a bad signing by any means. I think I might like it a little more than the Todd Monken signing, just because again he's familiar with the team.
Yeah,
you know, he knows that offense and he's had success with that offense. You know, obviously with Josh Allen, the run game's taken a big step these last couple seasons. So I mean, I don't hate that at all. I think of all the options available, that was probably the best one. And I mean, at least again with Todd Monken, that was an inspired choice. Like they had a reason for bringing him in. You know, again, he helped this offense, the offense in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson was obviously out a lot of last year with injury. Tyler Huntley comes in, and a lot of those games, you know, the Ravens were competitive. He was able to make it work with that offense and, you know, give them a shot week 18 to make the playoffs. Obviously, it didn't quite pan out.
Yeah.
And so, again, I given, you know, the Cleveland situation, I think it's a pretty solid signing for them as well. But, yeah, again, I cannot get over the Mike McCarthy one.
Yeah. I mean, the Raiders and Cardinals, the guys that they're going to probably bring in are, like, not exactly the most viable candidates. I mean, you got Clint Kubiak, and then, I mean, Davis Webb was a consideration, but he ended up pulling out of that Raiders head coaching search. I mean, Mike LaFleur, the Rams coordinator. I think the Rams passing game coordinator was a considerable option as well. It's like guys that might not have had, like, the most experience as, like, a play caller or, you know, in charge of an entire unit, but I feel like, I don't know, it could have been a lot worse if you're either one of those two franchises. So we'll see what develops there. But let's get onto these playoffs games. So the AFC Championship, the New England Patriots held on at Mile High to beat the Denver Broncos 10-7.
Mm-hmm. Thrilling.
Very thrilling. The snow was absolutely beautiful. I mean, everything just worked out according to plan. It was such an ugly, sloppy slugfest from start to finish. Neither offense could really do anything. The defenses took center stage from start to finish, but New England ended up making enough plays at the most important times, and that's why they're back in the Super Bowl. So, what'd you assess from that game?
Yeah, I mean, again, the New England defense has really been great this entire playoff run, holding the Chargers to 3 points in the wild card week, 4 turnovers the next week against Houston, 5 turnovers, excuse me. And again, holding the Broncos to 7 points this last week. Obviously, it was not looking good for the Broncos even going into that game. Backup quarterback in the snow. They actually looked good early in the game, and I thought maybe that Jared Stidham would give that team a chance.
Right.
But after that fourth down, which I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail, that 4th and 1 at like about the 20, maybe even the 15-yard line, they really just lost all momentum in that game, and obviously they couldn't score after that. They had the field goal attempt that was blocked. But again, like the main thing to me has been how this New England defense has really stepped up in the playoffs. They've looked like an elite defense, and that's certainly how they got to the Super Bowl. They wouldn't have been in that situation without them. And you mentioned the offense made plays when it counted. They were able to run out the clock. So again, if the Patriots are able to win the Super Bowl, which again we'll talk about in a couple minutes, it will have to be their defense shutting down Sam Darnold. I think that's the more important side of the ball. It would have to be really low scoring game for the Patriots to win, like it was this past weekend. But I mean, they've earned their spot despite the fact that they're, well, at least the assumption by some that they're schedule merchants. But they
not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. They won the games that mattered, and they won all 3 of their playoff games, and now they're competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, after not being able to complete the first 3 passes of the game, I thought Jared Stidham started to settle in. I mean, the next third down on the second drive takes the deep shot to Marvin Mims, sets up 1st and goal at the 7. Couple plays later, Cortland Sutton's wide open for a touchdown, and that's exactly the type of start the Broncos offense needed. And I think for the rest of the first half, they didn't have too much trouble moving the football. They just couldn't capitalize on the points that they needed to get. And the case in point, 4th and 1 at the 14-yard line. You're midway through the second quarter. You have a chance to go up 10-0. And all you need to do is just take the points if you're Sean Payton. But instead, he went aggressive. They tried to go on a sprint option to the right. And yet 2 pass rushers were unblocked. Pass was broken up. Nearly got picked off. And then on the very next drive, fumble. And Jared Stidham tried to do too much. Patriots were able to take over at the 12-yard line, and all of a sudden the game is tied at 7 when you could have been up by 10. So that's one of the biggest reasons why, in championship football, the margin of error is this small. I mean, everybody can have the physical capabilities. It's how you handle yourself mentally and what you're able to do in those situations. And momentum is the biggest thing ever in those types of moments. So when you see the 2 missed field goals, one near the end of the first half and the other one that got blocked, those are the moments where you say, this is why you should have taken the points, Sean, because you would have had a chance to take the lead. And the worst case scenario, you might have been tied near the end of the fourth quarter, and we might have had overtime on our hands. I don't know how the outcome would have turned out, but that's one of those things where it's just you mess up in those situations and you let a lot of points and you leave that many points off the board. Those are the ones that come back to bite you the most. Now let me talk about the Patriots. If you told me that Drake May was going to go 10 for 21 and get sacked 5 times, I would have said they would have absolutely had no shot
and throw for under 100 yards.
And throw for under 100 and not even being able to score a point after the first drive of the second half. And then the touchdown that they scored, all they needed were 12 yards just to move down the ball. If you had told me that, I would have said Denver had a chance. And if Bo Nix had started, they might have had an even better chance of winning that game. I definitely believe that. But it didn't happen that way. So you can't really say could have, should have, would have. If whatever happens, happens. And you have nobody else to blame but yourselves if you don't get it done. But I think what really allowed the Patriots offense to kind of stay ahead and not lose too much momentum was their ability to run the football. Again, Drake May didn't have the best time throwing the football, but took off 8 times for 67 yards. And on the critical third down, right after the 2-minute warning, he was the one. He didn't even tell the offensive lineman this. He pretty much said, I'm keeping the bootleg, I'm rolling to the left, and I'm beating Jonah Ellis off the edge to get the first down and to send this team to the Super Bowl. And those are just the types of plays where, you might not be the best. It might not have been perfect, but, when the time comes and when it's time for you to close the deal, you show up in those moments, and that's exactly what it took. So, and Ramondre Stevenson had a heavy workload himself. I mean, Travion Henderson only touched the ball 3 times.
Yeah.
Yet Mondre on the first drive of the second half just really chipped away at the clock, and I feel like that was probably like the biggest drive of the whole second half, because as the snow started to fall down, the worse the game got, and neither offense could do anything as a result. But that big drive right there was what really allowed New England to just, stay ahead. And as long as the defense made enough plays, they were good to go. And sure enough, Jarrett Stidham threw that pick to Christian Gonzalez, and that was pretty much the dagger. So.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Ramondre played a great game, and I think that's why, you still have him as your RB1 to make these, big, not even big runs, these plays where you're running 4 yards, 5 yards, just consistently chipping away at the defense. Because, I mean, the defense wasn't going to give up a big play.
No.
And they didn't all game, especially in those conditions. And so, I mean, it would have been interesting to see what Bo Nix could have done if he was in the game, but it's hard for me to imagine, again, the way the Patriots defense played, the conditions of the game. It's hard for me to imagine that the Broncos offense does more than what they did against New England. And so, I mean, the Patriots, again, I think the way that they came in to sort of, making these small plays, wearing the defense down, that 10-minute drive, as you mentioned, to start the second half, that was the difference maker, right? That field goal put them up 10-7, and they never looked back.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think, in games like that, you don't need to have the biggest plays all the time. You just sort of need to control the ball, control the clock, and that's what New England did.
Yeah. Well, the NFC Championship was a lot more of a thriller.
Yeah.
So the Seattle Seahawks outlasted the Los Angeles Rams at home 31-27. My, oh my, the Seahawks are back in the Super Bowl after nearly 10 years. Mm-hmm. And Sam Darnold is the first quarterback of that 2018 draft class to reach a Super Bowl, just as we all predicted.
Yeah.
But Sam Darnold was just flat out phenomenal. Mm-hmm. That was the best game of his life, without question.
Definitely.
So, let's talk about it. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it. Like Sam Darnold, I was expecting the Rams to win. I sort of mentioned this last week. I expected the Rams to win because I didn't trust Sam Darnold in these situations, in these games. And, we've seen flashes of it throughout his career. Obviously, in the regular season, he had a few games where he just looked completely unstoppable. And I just didn't know if it could translate to the postseason. He had that game in Week 18 where he looked pretty good.
Yep.
Last week, he didn't play, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. He
didn't have to do too much.
He didn't have to do too much. And then, this week I was like, okay, maybe he's going to be a little rusty. Maybe he's not going to quite be himself because it's the playoffs. We don't know. But no, again, best game of his career, 350 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. I mean, he looked great. That offense was in control the entire time. And even though the Rams, scored 27 on that great Seattle defense, they stiffened up at the end and made sure not to let the Rams score on that 4th down in the red zone, not score on that final drive. But again, really, it was the offense that won them that game because, I mean, even the run game without Charbonnet looked pretty solid. Like Kenny Walker had a great game. JSN, obviously in the passing game now, he, not the best game of the season for him, but a really solid outing.
Yeah.
And yeah, Sam Darnold, I was just really impressed by what I saw from him. And, now obviously he's in the Super Bowl. He's got a chance to win the Super Bowl. And if he plays like that, even that Patriots defense I was just praising for playing so well throughout the playoffs, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop him.
Yeah. So there are a couple points that I have to add. Let me start with Sam Darnold. So third play of the game. It's 3rd down. Sam Darnold takes, third play for the Seattle offense, I should say. Sam Darnold takes a deep shot down the right side of the field to Rashid Shaheed, and he easily beats Darius Williams down the field for a 51-yard completion. And all of a sudden, they walk right down the field and they score a touchdown. I think Kenneth Walker was the one that punched it in. He cut to the outside, and they take an early 7-0 lead. And, throughout the rest of the first half, it was pretty much a back-and-forth showdown. I mean, I said last week the Rams offense was going to have a lot better of a game than they did in the last regular season matchup between these two teams, where they didn't take their foot off the gas after holding a 30-14 lead, or when they did, I should say. And guess what? Matthew Stafford played as well as you could have expected.
Yeah.
374 yards, 3 touchdowns. Puka Nacua, 9 catches for 165 yards. He made a lot of huge plays down the stretch. So he had that big touchdown in the third quarter against Tariq Woolen, right after a taunting penalty, by the way.
Yeah, that could have been a big turning point in the game if the Rams had ended up winning.
Yeah, but I'll get into that in just a second. But with Sam Darnold, I've said this last week. Against the Rams, he has had some of his worst performances of his career. I mean, when you look at it last year, regular season on Thursday Night Football, he got pretty much slowed down, lost that game 30-20. In the wild card, got sacked 9 times and scored as many points. This year in the regular season, at LA, 4 interceptions. Even in the win against the Rams in Seattle, not too long ago, he had a couple picks of his own and they were down by 16 points. And a lot of it was because of him, but he was able to, get him out of that big hole as well with the game-winning drive at the end in overtime. This time, with a bad oblique and all, you didn't even have to worry about that whatsoever because that guy was dealing from start to finish. It was probably the best NFC Championship performance from a quarterback that I've seen since Nick Foles, honestly, in 2017 against the Minnesota Vikings. Unless there's somebody else that comes to mind, I can't really think of anybody else that was that near flawless from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this year, I can't think of any other performance, off the top of my head that was wow, that was a flawless performance from X quarterback, right? And I think that was the kind of performance that Sam Darnold had and needed to have to give the Seahawks the win.
Any drive that, the Seahawks needed to, take the lead, they did that. Near the end of the first half, throws a perfect dime in the left corner of the end zone to JSN with less than 30 seconds left. In the second half, you're thinking, okay, you don't want them to take their foot off the gas, and he never did at any point. But I think there was one momentum swinging play that, allowed the Seahawks to stay ahead, and that was midway through the second half. So the Seahawks, they're forced to punt on their opening drive of the second half, and Xavier Smith, he muffs it as he's trying to fall back, trying to make the catch. And on the very next play, Darnold throws a bullet over the middle, not to Cooper Kupp, not to Jackson Smith-Njigba, but to Jake Bobo. And the Seahawks are ahead by double digits. And yes, the Rams got back into the game with a couple big touchdown drives of their own, which was including after the taunting penalty. But throughout the fourth quarter, neither team could score.
Yeah.
It was pretty much, the defense is tightening up. They did what they needed to do to just try to get their teams back into the game. But at the end of the day, just Seattle made more plays, and both quarterbacks were phenomenal. It was just, that turnover and Sam Darnold, getting off to the hot start that he did from start to finish, never fizzled out. And I think there were a couple of big drives that, allowed them to just stay ahead, and, that's why they're in the Super Bowl. So
yeah, and it would have been interesting to see what happened if the Rams had gotten that touchdown on that fourth down conversion in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
Again, the way that the Seahawks offense was playing, pass game and run game, I think they still score and I think they still win the game. They obviously didn't need to at that point in the game because they were already winning. They just needed to try to keep running down the clock.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the Seahawks still win, but it would have been interesting to see how the game shakes out if the Rams do end up getting in there.
The Rams had their chances, especially in those final few minutes, but just, like I said, the Seahawks just made a couple more plays in the end. That's just all it took. So, this was for the Rams. Unfortunately, it just ends a phenomenal season. Matthew Stafford, he's most likely going to win the MVP.
Wow, that's big for you to admit.
I personally think it should be Drake May, but it's probably going to be Matthew Stafford just because of the numbers, which is kind of confusing considering the fact that we picked Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson because of the teams around them, but that's a different discussion for another day. But at one point they were the best team in the NFC, then they became a 5th seed, and now they're not even going to be in the Super Bowl this year. It's a disappointing end, but the Seattle Seahawks, they proved to be the better team, and I think we have to give all our flowers to Sam Darnold because we didn't have all the faith in the world in him, but he pretty much shut all of us up. And if he wins the Super Bowl this year, then there might be a few Jets fans that are just, I feel like they'd be more happy for him than bitter. Maybe at the organization, but for him, definitely.
Him, certainly. Yeah, they'll definitely be happy for Sam Darnold. Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a career for Sam Darnold. I mean, he was backup for several years in San Francisco, and, finally he got another shot in Minnesota after the J.J. McCarthy injury last year.
I know.
Took full advantage. That's another team that's going to be upset in their organization.
Well, the Vikings, they just fired their general manager a couple hours ago, and I feel like some of it, I'm just speculating here, but I feel like some of it just had to attribute to the fact that they let Sam Darnold walk in free agency. And I get it. You have to give J.J. McCarthy a chance because you traded up for him in the first round for a reason. But I feel like there was some discontent around that. And the reports were that, there was a little bit of a power struggle. But I feel like that Sam Darnold decision had a huge reason why. But
Yeah, no, I mean, I was basically just going to say the same thing. Like, I think when Seattle got him over in the offseason, what was it? It was only like 3 years, $100 million, which is obviously a lot of money. But given the quarterback contracts we're seeing nowadays of, $50, even $60 million, it's not that much. And
exactly.
It's at the time, based on the way he played in Minnesota the year before, I was like, okay, this is a good signing. They're moving on from Geno Smith. This is probably the best guy available that they can get reasonably. So I was excited to see what the Seahawks did. But, I mean, they even exceeded my expectations. They've been great all year. Defense has been playing great. Offense has been, it's been completely rejuvenated under Sam Darnold. And, I think they're going to be really hard to beat in the Super Bowl, and they 100% deserve to be here.
Well, let's, with that being said, let's talk about it. Super Bowl 60, Levi Stadium, New England Patriots, Seattle Seahawks. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Here we go.
Yeah, who would have thought at the start of this year it would be Patriots Seahawks again?
Not me.
Yeah, no.
Not saying a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Given the Patriots fan that you are. Yeah, I mean, it's been such a wild ride. It sucks that it's going to have to end. But
what do you mean? We don't know that yet.
Well, no, I'm saying it's going to be a wild ride, like the whole season.
Oh, the whole season. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
The whole season.
I thought you were saying. Okay, my bad. But yeah, I think. I mean, if you told me at week 3 or after week 3 that the Patriots were going to be in the Super Bowl, I would have said you're full of crap because that team got off to a very slow start. They lost to the Raiders in week 1.
Yeah.
Then they beat Miami, and then they lost to Pittsburgh because they turned the ball over 5 times. And then week 5 happened against Buffalo. Sunday Night Football. Drake May absolutely balled out. Stephon Diggs had one of the best games of his career, and the Patriots ended up winning that game 23-20. And from that point on, that set them on a trajectory that they hadn't been on since 2019, or even 2018 if you want to go back to their last Super Bowl win. They only end up losing one more game the rest of the way, which was at home to Buffalo. They win the division for the first time since 2019. They win a playoff game for the first time since 2018. Then they get on to the second round. They beat the Houston Texans, who had the best defense in the National Football League. Before then, they beat the Los Angeles Chargers, who had just as strong of a defense with a more talented and gifted quarterback in Justin Herbert. Then they go to the AFC Championship on the road against Denver, whose defense led the league in sacks, whose offense was tremendously well coached. And yes, Bo Nix was out, and you had to start Jarrett Stidham, but they end up going to Denver in one of the most grueling home environments ever made in NFL history, and they end up winning that game in a very ugly, low-scoring matchup. And now they're back in the Super Bowl against, a very strong and a very feisty Seattle Seahawks team who's, to your point, whose defense has been elite all season long and whose offense has been playing their best football over the last couple of weeks or so.
Are they going to do it, Colin? You think the Patriots are going to keep it going?
I think so.
Wow.
I feel like, listen, they've already been in 3 of the NFL's top 5 defenses in the National Football League. They beat the Texans, they beat the Broncos, they beat the Chargers, and the Seahawks are in that conversation. And listen, Sam Darnold is 0-4 against the New England Patriots. I only have 4 words. He's in there somewhere. The guy that sees ghosts, the guy that on Monday Night Football against the Patriots in 2019 was literally caught on mic saying I'm seeing ghosts after throwing 4 interceptions. Listen, I get that his career is completely completely rejuvenated, that it's re-blossomed, and that he's been on a complete renaissance. I am so happy for Sam Darnold. I don't want to completely disrespect him too much, but listen, the Patriots can definitely give him their fair share of trouble because they've been absolutely outstanding all season long. You know, they've shut down Justin Herbert. They forced C.J. Stroud to turn the ball over 4 times. And listen, say what you will about Jarrett Stidham, but people were giving him a lot of, hope and faith to beat this Patriots team. And they only held him to 7 points. So I don't think Sam Darnold is too far off from that conversation. But I feel like for the Patriots to win, their offense needs to score.
Yeah.
And they need a lot of better drives because they've given up 15 sacks and they turned the ball over 5 times. There is no margin for error against this Seahawks team when you got Kenneth Walker and JSN and all those guys, the defense that they have, Sam Darnold playing as well as you could have expected him to or as well as you want him to play. Like, you need to make sure you get enough points on the board and you need to score a lot or else, if you let them hang around for too long, then it's only going to be a matter of time before that defense, starts to wear itself out. So.
Yeah, no, that's the thing for me, right, is that the Patriots defense has been playing great and I've, been speaking about them so highly over the last, 40 minutes or so. But yeah, the offense, they have not looked like they did in the regular season.
Right.
It's sort of been a complete role reversal where it was the offense in the regular season that got them to where they are. Now it's the defense that's gotten them to the Super Bowl, but the offense has sort of taken a hit as a result. And, they have been playing these top 5 defenses in the league over the last 3 weeks. But you mentioned Seattle is in that conversation too, and yeah, the offense needs to score more than 16 points, than 10 points over the last weekend. Obviously, they got 28 against Houston. That might be enough to do it, depending, again, on how the offense does. If they look like they did last week, then they're going to certainly need more than 28 points. I could see this being either way, where it could be a low-scoring defensive game where both offenses struggle a little bit.
Yeah. Or
it could be maybe Drake May finds his footing again and gets, he figures it out on offense. Sam Darnold does the same, and it's a high-scoring game. Like, that's the beauty of it, right, is that you have 2 teams that are pretty well-rounded overall, but the way, it could just go either way. Like, if one has an off day, one player has an off day, then that whole unit could crumble.
Yeah. I feel like for the Patriots offense, this has to be the week I feel like this can be the week where they hit their stride because it's just a couple weeks ago or just last week, Matthew Stafford played just as well as you wanted him to play. 370-plus yards. Puka Nacua balled out. The running game was healthy. They put up over 100 yards themselves. So the Patriots have the pieces to do that. The problem is, if you turn the ball over, then I'm scared that the momentum is just going to shift in the entire direction and things are going to get lopsided. Because even with that great defense that you have, you just need to make sure that you don't put them in the worst field position possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you said the Patriots are going to win.
Yeah. Let's make our final score predictions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, listen, it's Super Bowl 49, and I know that the rosters are completely different now than they were before. But you had the Legion of Boom, and you had Bill Belichick's defense. 2 highly respected units, and that ended up being a pretty interesting thriller. The Patriots had to overcome a 24-14 deficit, and they ended up scoring 14 unanswered points to win that game, thanks to 4 touchdown passes from Tom Brady and Malcolm Butler saving the day at the 1-yard line. I feel like we're going to get somewhat of a similar script here. I feel like both offenses are going to play scrappy. They're going to throw a few punches, but in the fourth quarter, I think it's going to be exactly what we saw in the NFC Championship game. I think the defenses are going to tighten up, and it's just going to come down to those 2 or 3 plays that seal the deal. So I'm saying the New England Patriots, they're going to hold on, and they're going to capture their 7th Lombardi trophy with a 27-23 finish.
Interesting. I'm gonna say pretty similar score. I'm going to say 28-24, but I have the Seahawks winning. I think that they're a more well-rounded team, and in the playoffs, they've really proven that. Again, that offense on New England, I think they are going to sort of get things right, especially in this neutral stadium. Not going to be snowing, not going to be as bad as it was in Denver.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how I felt going into the playoffs about this Seattle team, but I'm convinced now. After blowing out the 49ers, after beating the Rams, who were my Super Bowl favorites going into the playoffs, I just think that it's going to be so hard to stop that team as a whole. That offense has been playing lights out, and that defense, they've also been playing lights out. That's the thing. I think it's going to be a good game. I do think the Patriots are going to give them a run for their money, but I do have the Seahawks winning at 28-24.
I feel like both teams had a lot of naysayers from the start of the season up until now. I mean, with the Patriots, it was, they had the easy schedule. They've only been beating a bunch of cakewalks. And then in the playoff run, they've been beating, elite defenses and pretty strong teams just to get to this point. For the Seahawks, we always said, the Rams are the 49ers. They're the two better teams in the division. And the Seahawks not only took the crown, but they pretty much ended both of their dreams just to get to the Super Bowl. And ironically enough, the Seahawks are playing in the 49ers' house just to get to this point. So I think it's going to be one hell of a game, and I can't wait to see it. Can't wait for the halftime show. Bad Bunny is doing it. And next week, both of us are going to be at the game. We're going to be covering both teams. So it's going to be one heck of a week, and we can't wait for all the action. So
yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
February 8th can't come soon enough. But thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode where we'll recap the Super Bowl. Let's see who takes it home then. So take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And have a great rest of your Friday.
See you guys.
See ya. Bye-bye.